The cool thing about this video game industry is that every couple of years we have this giant success story kind of come out of the middle of nowhere from this smaller player, this smaller company. And that is this year here in 2023, Baldur's Gate 3 being developed by Larian Studios. For around 20 or so years, Larian has struggled to stay afloat. They were facing bankruptcy around the mid-2000s, and then just a couple of years ago, they released Divinity Original Sin to prove themselves to Wizards of the Coast to get the opportunity just to work on Baldur's Gate. Originally, they were rejected that opportunity, but they had to fund Baldur's Gate 3 themselves, and this was a huge risky venture for them, because if Baldur's Gate 3 isn't a game that's a success story, they could be under, like we saw from the developers behind Immortals of Avium, a game that came out just recently, and the studio released their first game. That was their first game, and now they're tanking. I think they fired around 50% of the developers. That's the risky nature of this gaming industry. But the cool thing about Baldur's Gate 3 is that Larian Studios, whatever they do from now on, they are going to be their household name. Everybody's going to be paying attention to them. Baldur's Gate 3 has been showered with tons of amazing reviews, giant success on PC and PlayStation, and hopefully soon Xbox. And again, at all of the Game of the Year shows later on, they're going to get that honor that they truly deserve here in 2023. But it's not just Baldur's Gate. We've seen in recent years games like Vampire Survivors, Outer Wilds, Cult of the Lamb. Years before that, there was Inside. These are like little indie darlings, or games that kind of came out of the middle of nowhere that changed this industry forever. But these games were only made possible to the engine. Some of that is proprietary engines. I think Baldur's Gate 3 runs on their own Divinity engine. Some people may know Rockstar has their own proprietary stuff with their Rage engine, CDPR with the Red engine, Bethesda uses their Creation engine, and then we have like Unreal Engine, which we're seeing like so many game studios, so many game developers using nowadays, especially in the AAA space. But we also have this engine, Unity, that has been around a long time. I've messed around with it myself, but it's something that costs a decent amount to use, but it's something that a lot of indie developers rely on. And we're talking about Unity because of this guy, John Riccatello, the CEO, who has made some, let's just say, he has a reputation. He is a greedy scumbag. That's the best way to describe him, especially based on the remarks that he has made in the past. This is one of the notable ones in 2022. He said, "Mobile devs who don't prioritize monetization are fucking idiots." That's his words. And years before then, when he was a EA CEO, yes, John Riccatello ran EA around 2010. He ushered in the age of the loot box. And he also had some bold visions for the future of Battlefield, in which players would have to pay $1 to reload their weapons. At the time, around 2019, I uploaded this clip from an investor call that he gave in 2011 about this vision that he had. And hear it for yourself to understand the man that right now is truly bringing a nightmare to this video game industry and wrecking the lives of so many game developers. Many forget this, but 7 years ago, EA CEO John Riccatello, who would later resign and Andrew Wilson would take the position on, well, he gave his opinion in an investor call on what he views as a better future for this gaming industry, and what he says may sound a little terrifying.
When you are 6 hours into playing Battlefield and you run out of ammo in your clip, and we ask you for $1 to reload, you're really not very price sensitive at that point in time. And for what it's worth, the cogs on the clip.
Guy is a literal fucking supervillain. The way he talks, Jesus Christ.
Really low. And so, essentially what ends up happening, and the reason the play first, pay later model works so nicely, is the consumer gets engaged in a property. They might spend 10, 20, 30, 50 hours on the game. And then when they're deep into the game, they're well invested in it. We're not gouging, but we're charging. And at that point in time, the commitment can be pretty high. As a personal anecdote, I spent about $5,000 calendar year to date on doing just this type of thing on our products and others. I can readily attest to how well it works. But it's a great model, and I think it represents a substantially better future for the industry.
Substantially better future for the industry, nickel and diming players just to reload their weapons in a first-person shooter. That is the man we're dealing with. He personifies greed, which actually makes sense because the word greed now has his face on Wikipedia. And that is all because of this specific new change that he made to their business model. Unity introduces new fee attached to game installs. Starting in January 2024, the company will begin charging what it is calling a Unity runtime fee that is based on the number of users installing games built on the widely used engine. The runtime fee will kick in after developers cross specific revenue and install thresholds that scale with different subscription plans for those on Unity Personal or Unity Plus licenses. The fee will kick in after a project crosses both $200,000 in revenue or over 12 months and $200,000 total installs. So yes, they are now going to be charging developers for people just installing it. Nickel and diming is what we have here. And here is a better little diagram showing the new fees that will be attached to these games. And in Unity's announcement, the company attributed the fee to the ongoing development of Unity Runtime, the executable that players download with every game and allows games made in Unity to work at scale, blah, 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 blah. Their fucking excuses for greed is what this is, pretty much. Obviously, indie developers are absolutely livid with these changes, and also a lot of people are pointing out some very interesting, sneaky fucking behavior that Unity has pulled with their terms of service. As this Reddit thread points out, Unity silently removed their GitHub repo to track license changes, then updated their license to remove the clause that lets you use the terms of service from the version you shipped with, then insist games already shipped need to pay the new fees. After their previous controversy with license changes in 2019, after disagreements with Improbable, Unity updated their terms of service with the following statement: "When you obtain a version of Unity and don't upgrade your project, we think you should be able to stick to that version of the terms of service." Pretty consumer-friendly, developer-friendly. Great to see. I wonder what changed since then. As part of their commitment to being an open platform, they made a GitHub repository that tracks changes to the Unity terms to give developers full transparency about what changes are happening. Well, sometime around June last year, they silently deleted that GitHub repo. April 3rd this year, they updated their terms of service to remove the clause that was added after the 2019 controversy. That clause was as follows: Unity may update the Unity software additional terms at any time for any reason without notice, and those updated terms will apply to the most recent current year version of the Unity software, provided that if the updated terms adversely impact your rights, you may elect to continue to use any current year versions of the Unity software. And it goes on, but this clause is completely missing in the new terms of service, and I wonder why. Was it possibly to do this new greedy little decision here? It probably was. And it is also worth mentioning that indie game developers who use Unity are now preparing legal action, as they obviously see that this is very illegal what is happening here. This one indie developer is saying, "Comment from our lawyers on this Unity debacle. It is far from clear that these changes will be enforceable ever actually be able to be implemented in a lawful or legal manner." Now, like I said, it doesn't even matter if Unity backtracks on this, because this was clearly aimed not necessarily at indie game developers. This was aimed at mobile game developers, because it is worth mentioning that these are the games that use Unity: Cuphead, Pokemon Go, Genshin Impact, Beat Saber, Hearthstone, Subnautica, Rust, Genshin, well again I just mentioned that, Gunfire Reborn, Pillars of Eternity, Cult of the Lamb, Marvel Snap, Risk of Rain 2, Firewatch, Outer Wilds, My Friend Pedro, Tunic, RimWorld, Return of the Obra Dinn, Fall Guys, Kerbal Space Program, Prey for the Gods, Inside, Axie Infinity, Hitman Sniper, Ori and the Will of the Wisp, Hollow Knight. There's just so many great games here, but it is worth mentioning that the two that stand out, maybe just to me, but is Pokemon Go and Genshin Impact. And you know why? Because they make a lot of fucking money. Genshin Impact surpasses $3 billion on mobile, averages $1 billion every 6 months. That is notable because it's quite clear Unity wants that money. They want some of that money, and this is their greedy way of going about it. But for some reason, it seems like the Unity leadership team didn't think about how this would affect the indie game developers, or if they did, they didn't give a shit about it. And it's worth mentioning that the Unity execs may have actually already took part in some actual insider trading by selling shares mere days before the obvious shit show that is now the pricing structure changes. Here we have the president of the company selling 37,000 shares, and then we have pretty much all of the leadership team, Riccatello, and a couple of other directors and officers all taking part in this, which is, it's just so fucking disgusting, because they knew there was going to be uproar. I don't think that they expected this much uproar, but this is how we are seeing this entire industry react. We had In Exile Entertainment saying, hello, yes, we're here to collect money for a game you released 10 years ago. Good luck. We had another game developer saying, today Unity announced that they'll soon be taking a fee from developers for every copy of the game installed over a certain threshold, regardless of how that copy was obtained. Because yeah, fraudulent installs is something that's going to happen, and how Unity, how their leadership team is even going to, deal with that, it's pretty much just, we'll work with you on that. Really? I don't think they will, or there's going to be lots of problems with how they go about it. But they continue saying, this decision puts us and countless other studios in a position where we might not be able to justify using Unity for our future titles. If these changes aren't rolled back, we'll be heavily considering abandoning our wealth of Unity expertise we've accumulated over the years and starting from scratch in a new engine, which is really something we'd rather not do. On behalf of the dev community, we're calling on Unity to reverse the latest in a string of short-sighted decisions that seem to prioritize shareholders over their product's actual users. I fucking hate it here. And I think a lot of people need to realize the damage has already been done. Lives are going to be changed by this. Studios are going to be shut down. We had one indie game developer already talk about how, as of right now, I have over 50 studios that have reached out to ask for advice on how to switch away from Unity, and I am not counting one-person teams or student projects. Absolutely staggering scale, never seen anything like it. And they later said that's now over 100. Like I said, damage is done. They're going to move away from Unity because of this shit. And again, I don't think that the Unity leadership team cares that much, because this was directly aimed at the big mobile players, the Genshin Impact, the Pokemon Go's, the games that are really bringing in the money that Unity wants to start having. They want to start having some of that pot of wealth that they've made, which again, the fact that the Unity team shows that they didn't give a shit about how indie developers would feel about this. It's disgusting. It truly is. But this continues on. Please understand, this isn't just like one studio said anything about this. We had Megacrit, the developers behind Slay the Spire, saying, despite the immense amount of time and effort our team has already poured in development of our new title, we will be migrating to a new engine unless the changes are completely reverted and terms of service protections are put in place. We have never made a statement before. That is how badly you fucked up. This has almost 100,000 likes. We had Massive Monster, the devs behind Cult of the Lamb, saying, at Massive Monster, our mission has been to support and promote new and emerging indie games. The introduction of these fees by Unity could pose significant challenges for aspiring developers. Quit being stinky, Unity. And then we had another indie developer saying, I'll be porting my sandbox game from Unity to Godot, another game engine. We had Phasmophobia, another big game that popped up around a year or so ago, with their own statement against Unity's terms. We had another indie developer here, So Long and Thanks to All the Fish Unity, another dev moving away from Unity because of these recent changes. We even had the devs behind, I believe, Rust saying, these developer statements on Unity are getting too long. TLDR, Unity can get fucked. Perhaps one of the biggest games of the last decade, something that definitely defined the pandemic. Inner Sloths Among Us even had their own statement about this sort of deal, telling them to stop it, WTF. We even had the devs behind Baldur's Gate 3, one of the marketing guys, talk about this situation, saying, while trying to shake down big mobile game companies, they genuinely overlook the effect on the entire community that shapes the narrative about games on a global level, premium game developers. And just to understand this isn't just like these indie game developers are complaining because they're going to have to give more money to a corporate power. These are studios that are going to get shut down. Developers are going to lose their jobs. This isn't just like a couple of studios. This is hundreds of studios could be affected by this, with thousands of game developers now out of work because of what has happened here. And many of them will have to learn how to use Unreal Engine or a different game engine. I mean, lives have been spent, decades of experience just on this game engine, and now it's been ruined by these greedy powers and this fucking tool right here. But as this game developer, this mobile developer pointed out, our studio focuses on mobile games for kids. We don't display advertising for kids because we are against it. Our only way to monetize those games is through in-app purchases. According to our last year numbers, if we were in 2024, we would owe Unity 109% of our revenue. 1 million of revenue against 1.09 of Unity runtime fee. This means more than we actually earned, and of course, not even taking into account salaries, taxes, operational costs, and marketing. This is what I mean by studios are going to be ruined by this, and developers are going to lose their jobs and livelihoods. We even had Unity employees speaking out about this ordeal, saying that we fought like hell against this, brought up all the points everyone has, and then the announcement came without warning because they didn't give a shit. We've also seen other Unity developers taking to Twitter saying that they're leaving the company because of this, and I've just never seen a tech company like Unity burn themselves to the ground so fast, and it's astonishing that somebody like this turd would even let this happen, or a board of directors wouldn't see how this would negatively affect the company long term, especially in terms of reputation. But again, it's a money grab at these mobile game companies, and we'll see how it works out. But I definitely feel like we're going to see in the next week or so them trying to backtrack, but I think it's too little too late, especially because unless there are some terms of service protections, but I highly doubt we're going to see that, unless again this outrage just continues to fuel, and this guy is hopefully going to be forced out of his position. He really shouldn't even be working in games. Just such a giant turd of a person who has negatively hurt this gaming industry so many times, countlessly throughout the last decade, or the last couple of decades to be fair. We did see this. We have added a new enemy to our Unity game. If he wins, game will close and auto reinstall itself. What weapon should we give him? It's kind of funny. Riccatello now a supervillain, as he appears to be. We have another game developer pointing out that I'll make a game. Game is freemium. Game makes $200,000 from in-app purchases after being installed 3 million times. Now own Unity, 20 cents per 2.8 million installs, $560,000. That's $360,000 more than we made. It's just disgusting, this whole thing. Another indie developer saying Unity's new runtime fee is a complete joke. Even their example calculation shows a game with $2 million in revenue having to pay Unity $282,000 per year, or 14% of revenue, and that's on top of the $2,000 year Unity Pro license costs that they charge. And then we have another developer pointing out how much they would owe. Oh shit, I guess I owe Unity $5.6 million. Anyone got some spare change? Because this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to cause many businesses to go out of business because of what's happening at that top level from those greedy-ass leadership executives led by John Riccatello. Now, it is worth mentioning that we have already seen Unity start to kind of backtrack a little bit, but they've also doubled down in some regards. So we have this article coming from Axios. Unity rushes to clarify price increase plan as game developers fume. The new runtime fee announced Tuesday morning is tied to a player's installations of a game, an action that previously didn't cost developers anything. The new fee system will begin at the start of 2024. After initially telling Axios earlier Tuesday that a player installing a game, deleting it, and installing it again would result in multiple fees, Unity's Witten, I guess he's an executive or a spokesman, told Axios that the company would actually only charge for an initial installation. A spokesperson told Axios that Unity had regrouped to discuss this issue. This is the only change that they're making, and again, they doubled down here. He hoped that this would allay fears of install bombing, where an angry user could keep deleting and reinstalling a game to rack up fees to punish a developer, but an extra fee will be charged if a user installs a game on a second device, say a Steam Deck, after installing a game on PC. So again, they're backtracking a little bit and saying like, yeah, we're going to try to stop some fraudulent behavior that could happen, but yeah, if you install, I mean, we're still sticking to that. We're not backing down on that regard. Now, this is the part where I think we're already hearing news about, potential class action lawsuits from indie game developers. We're going to see some big players jumping into this very soon. As for Game Pass and other subscription service, Witten said that developers like AgroCrab would not be on the hook, as these fees are charged to distributors, which in the Game Pass example would be Microsoft. You is sure as shit know Phil Spencer and his team are going to be filing a giant lawsuit against Unity if this does continue forward. Again, I don't think that this is even legal in any capacity, and I think that Unity's open to lots of legal action, especially in regards to this, their terms of service, which they sneakily deleted some of this stuff. Again, I just question how enforceable any of this is, but it does continue. Our core point with this is simply to make sure that we have the right value exchange so that we can continue to invest in our fundamental mission to make sure that we can deliver the best tools for people to make. They don't give a shit about people. They don't give a shit. This is literally a shakedown of the Pokemon Go's and Genshin impacts. It's not about indie developers. They didn't even consider them. They didn't give a shit about their opinion about this. They just went forward because they want those billions of dollars. They want some of that pot of wealth that these giant companies have made, the Nintendos and whoever runs Genshin Impact. It's not fun to get a bunch of angry feedback on any particular day, and I think that it is us needing to clarify some of these points, but we're listening and we'll continue to blah, 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 whatever. Who gives a shit about what he has to say, honestly? Because they knew that there was going to be uproar about this decision. To this extent, though, maybe not. It is worth mentioning that there has been some rumors. We have this report coming from Eurogamer that Unity will quietly waive controversial fees if developers switch to its ad monetization service. They just want to kill AppLovin, which is their competition. A fresh report into Unity's highly controversial change when their games are downloaded has thrown fresh light into the situation. Mobile gamer sources say Unity has already offered some studios a 100% fee waiver if they switch over to Unity's own level play ad platform. The report quotes industry consultants that say this move is an attempt to destroy Unity's main competitor in this field, AppLovin. This is what this was all about. Again, it's a shakedown of the mobile gaming industry because that's where most of the money is being made nowadays. It's all those microtransactions, and Unity wants a piece of that pie. It's just unfortunate that so many indie developers, their lives are right now are kind of in the middle of this, and ultimately Unity will never be able to be trusted again unless, again, there are some terms of service protections that are put in place, but I highly doubt we're going to see that coming from this leadership team under John Riccatello. And right now the calls are getting very, very loud to see him resign, but I highly doubt he does. But this is just a disturbing situation. I've never seen a tech company destroy their reputation so fast, but Unity did it. And let me know what you make of this in the comment section below. I think it's just it's a very disgusting ordeal, but this is going to push many other developers to these other game engines. I think we saw one, I think it's called Godot, and then there's obviously Epic Games' Unreal Engine, which I'm sure that Tim Sweeney's going to be raking in a little bit more cash because of this horrible decision making coming from the top at Unity. But again, let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below. Thank you for watching. Make sure to leave a like if you did enjoy this video or if you found any informative value, and consider subscribing for more videos like this. I'll see you later.